What are your insights on upcoming career roles on high in demand roles in operations?
So actually, operations primarily is in like two or three buckets. You can group it out. Number one would be service operations, and another would be supply chain operations. Now, service operations I do not have much insight on, so I will focus on the supply chain operations. Now, inside supply chain operations, the how the entire landscape is evolving is that it is becoming a lot more tool driven, data analytics heavy. So and also a lot of automation is coming in this field through various tools like Anaplan and other tools which are actually doing this. So if I have to kind of summarize like three major roles which will still stand out, so in terms of volume, if I am sorting them, so one would be procurement roles because procurement roles involves a lot of negotiations and your blockchain technology and all those things, they are useful for high frequency, low volume sort of negotiation and contracts. But other than that, mostly procurement roles. Majority of the other controlling procurement parameters will still be there because that controls the cost. Another area would be, as I mentioned, I touched upon it. So data analytics in planning. So a lot of skill set is there, which is demanded. There is a skill gap at this point of time in terms of data analytics in planning. So another area would be that. And third, which kind of remains throughout, so management consulting roles in operations. So these are will be like across your supply and service operations, and obviously comprising a lot more moving parts. So those three roles by and large will be like the still the upcoming or high demand roles in operations, supply chain
Okay.
operations that mostly.
Yeah. What exactly does a demand planner do?
So most supply chain companies operate with the premise that they will be able to service a certain percentage of the demand that comes to them. Um, Now, how to service that demand is done through business decisions. So, in any sort of product that you manufacture or service that you manufacture, there is a supply cycle and a demand cycle. Now, supply cycle is related to sort of the infrastructure and the overall supply chain setup. If I have to give you an example, the shortest supply cycle would be something like quick service restaurants like McDonald's. They would have half of the stuff prepped in terms of fries and everything. You just have to put them in the fryer and actually go to the final finished goods, which is the actual fries. To very long cycle products like say projects, ships, aircraft. These are long cycle products. So depending on the business cycle, I mean business supply cycle, you would have to know when your demand is coming up and how to kind of break it down into and how to break it down as well as channelize that demand into that supply cycle. So the role of the demand planner is supposed to give that future view of that customer demand as well as kind of disaggregate that demand over the entire supply cycle so that the company is able to fulfill to its maximum possible extent the demand that is there. Now, I mean, you can be an MTS, like a made to stock sort of a company, like in any FMCG or to that extent e-commerce as well, where you have stocks present. So deciding how much stock to keep, where to keep, that is a function of the numbers that the demand planners generate. So essentially, that's at a high level what demand planners kind of do. But if I break it down tactically, so it's basically a lot of data analytics is involved. You will have to look at a lot of patterns in the data and figure out when your customer demand is coming, where it is coming, and in what quantity it is coming, so that and have the best guess around it and which is basically and transfer those numbers into your supply cycle and nodes around it. Say a supply planning team, the procurement team, the dispatch planning team, the inventory team, everywhere. So that's essentially what a demand planner does.
Okay. What are some challenges that you have faced in operational roles?
So operations, by definition, it's a cost function. It is not it's a cost center. It's not a revenue center. So you when you are in operations, you are actually competing for resources all the time. So say for example, in whichever vertical of either planning or execution you are at, you will have to perform within a budget. You will have to perform within say competitive cost and targets as well as KPIs. So because it is that way, and obviously it is analytics driven as well as negotiations driven, and it's high energy as well. So for me, what I faced was I took a little time coming into terms with being assertive and forthcoming per se. And this is again, this is depending on the culture. So what I found is Indian companies have this, all sorts of Indian companies generally have this overall pointer where you have to really fight your point through to keep your point. US and European companies have a relatively softer approach comparatively. So that's one area. Another area would be it is tool driven because you handle essentially any sort of role you do. It's governed by very simple equations. Say if you plan for supplies, it's basically what you have to supply minus what you have and minus what is coming to you. That's very simple equation, but you have to do that for multiple line items across different geographies and things like that. So it's very simple equations defined over larger sets of data. So any sort of tool that is needed in for that company kind of becomes critical, and that is another challenge that a person will face. So, I mean, being skilled in kind of run-of-the-mill tools like say Excel, R, SQL, etc. These sometimes act as large advantage gaps, and kind of helps you, getting exposure through them at the right places as well.
Describe your day in life at Asian Paints.
Okay, so again, this is kind of role and it is kind of role dependent. So particularly for my role, so and also because it is role dependent, the type of job that I do is relatively regular, as well as it is a cycle that kind of rotates monthly. So, and if I have to break it down, I will break it down into weeks. So, first week is more about a lot of data analytics that happens regarding, say, last month or previous month performances and trends and things like that. And obviously, reports also are generated basis those analysis. Second and third week goes in a lot of discussions basis those analysis, which kind of determines what will be the future outlook going forward. And fourth week is where all those three things kind of come together, all the data analytics, all the negotiations and the context setting, the market intelligence, everything kind of comes together and where you finalize the numbers that are going to be there. But on an average day, ideally, I think the day begins by looking at how and where the sale is performing, maybe talking to sales and other supply chain representatives to understand what the major concern areas are. And obviously, there will be some sort of analysis and some sort of presentation involved where you present and kind of put through your views and insights so that better business decisions can be taken. So yeah, that's kind of the life at Asian Paints on an average basis.
Any tips for the MBA operation students who will be going for the placement soon?
So I won't say tips, but I will tell you what my understanding of an interview process is, and basis that kind of bringing out what the insights will be. And also the pointer is it is not necessarily related to operations; it can be for anyone. So the performance in interviews ideally depends on the confidence that you have. So I mean, on even with the most toughest of the interviews, if you're confident, you'll probably crack it. And in my experience, confidence is related to preparation. So the more preparation prepared you are, more confident you will be. So the easiest way to be more prepared is to have your CV or your resume kind of detailed out, and obviously preparing that. I mean, having that in your head per se. So that way, you are at least confident as to you will be able to defend whatever you have to present. A and B, you can obviously look at also preparing HR questions. So there will be a set of 10, 15 odd HR questions you can write. I mean, you will find that on the internet and they kind of repetitive. So 5, 10, if you do, you can reconstruct the rest. So if you do these two things, ideally your confidence should be there. Now, you would also want to balance out the stress. Generally, you would be, once you are preparing, you will have some stress alongside. So ideally, to balance out the stress, you would have to understand one thing. Any college you are at, the way college selection happens, I mean, any college you enter, the way they evaluate you during the interviews is to understand whether they will be able to place you or not. So if you are in a particular college, you are already studying, so you should be very confident that your teachers or people who have evaluated you or understand that you are already placeable material. So you are more or less, you can be confident that you will get placed either way, even if you lose this one. And the third pointer, you have to understand that there are some things which will be beyond your influence and you will not be able to help them. Rather, you should utilize if it is in your favor. For example, it's luck. For not for example, it is luck. If the interviewer is having a bad day, you will probably not have a good interview. And if the interviewer is looking for someone like you and probably is from the same undergrad college or has some same what do you call interest or something like that, use that to your advantage. So that's the third pointer. So I mean, these three things put together, I mean, worst case is if you do not get through, so you can obviously blame luck. Go back to and go back to knowing with the comfort and the trust that you will get placed. And third, obviously go back to your preparative area and repeat that cycle. So I mean, it's an easy process, just that there are too many myths and too much stigma around it for people to actually understand what's going on. So if you have a higher, if you look at it from when I look at it from when I look at my placements from today, 5 years down the line, I feel most of the stress and other thoughts that were passing through my mind is insignificant. So that you have to look at it from that point of view and obviously focus on your preparations. That is kind of, yeah, what I would say.
How did you crack PwC, and what was the process, and what were the kind of questions that you faced in the interview?
So with PwC, there were two telephonic rounds and there were three in-person rounds. The first telephonic round had a guesstimate. Rest of the round, except the last one, had cases. The thumb rule for guesstimates is that ideally you should be able to segment the problem. And I think what I have also taken some interviews when I was with PwC. I was also hiring people from colleges at that point of time. So what I have seen and what I have noted from other interviewers is that the thumb rule is you should ideally be segmenting the problem into at least 3 levels. So for example, if I tell you what's the population of India, you should start from, say, from an age bracket. That is level 1. Level 2, maybe look at something like the sex bracket, say male and female, and maybe talk about something like the income bracket, say the greater than 1 lakh, between 1 lakh and 50,000 and less than 50,000. So those 4 segmentations help. That tells you you're in structure A, and B, you should apply reasonable assumptions to those segments so that you are able to roll up to the total number. Third thing which helps in guesstimates is if you can call out, say, pitfalls around those assumptions. For example, you have assumed the amount of milk a person consumes in India is, let's say, a liter a day. Then once you are done with the problem and you arrive at the answer, you can say there is a sensitivity around that or a scenario around that, say North Indian person will consume way more milk than a South Indian person, and some basis that you can variate the answer. So that is guesstimates. Regarding cases, you would need to follow a structure. Generally, majority of the cases can be solved by breaking down very simple equations. Say the most simplest equation that you can apply to almost any case is revenue minus cost equal to profit. So basis that, if you just break it down that way and then go with a MECE approach, generally you are able to arrive at the answer. Because the cases, you have to understand the interviewer also, even if they are giving a very complicated case, ultimately they will have to have a logical explanation for the entire case. So for them to have a logical explanation for the case and they taking so many interviews, they would have a relatively easy case planned. Just that they would want a simple starting point and follow the structure with a MECE approach. Ideally, if you do those two things, you will be able to solve cases. Other than that, I do not remember the cases per se, but one was regarding maintenance problem. One was regarding setting up of a printer business, and the third was on a pharma on a pharma company, because I at that point of time was coming in from Abbott, so that was the case that the final round gave. But yeah, the printer case was interesting because they wanted to set up a printer business. So I used the revenue minus cost equal to profit. So you would set up a business with the goal of having maximizing profit and minimizing cost. And printers, you know what the costs are. So basis those things, you kind of develop the entire flow. So yeah, that's the kind of the process and the entire kind of cheat sheet around cracking
Okay.
consulting interview.
Describe your role as a senior associate at PwC.
Hmm. So, see, in a senior associate role, so you either work with other associates who are tagged to you, or you work independently and you are tagged to a manager. So generally, that's the fulfillment structure. In PwC, I was my clients were all in the US. So client interactions would generally be mediated by US PwC team until unless I was at site. So you could be on site as well. And say with a senior associate profile, you will be at site. At least once you will be at site. Uh, majority of the kind of the think through happens in teams. So for example, the entire project team would sit, and there would be essentially two types of meetings. So one type of meeting will be called as brainstorming, where when you are given that problem, whichever business problem you are at, the client is at, you break down that problem into constituent parts and try to solve them. So that's the brainstorming session. So once you have decent approaches to that problem, you then go into something called as a storyboarding session. So there are two types of basic meeting that happens. Storyboarding session is where you kind of decide on the approach on how you would tell to the client whatever solution you're proposing. Now, once those two meetings happened, then it was mostly a lot of work that used to happen in terms of doing the analytics and all the research that is needed, and b kind of painting it up into a slide, putting together all the thoughts into a concise format. The work generally used to, say, for example, any deliverable to the client or to anyone is say for next week Friday. So the work ideally would get completed by this week Thursday or Friday. Post that, it is just sharpening of the insights and sharpening of the presentation. So multiple reviews would happen at different levels with a manager, with a director, with a partner. once everyone is kind of onboarded into that final presentation is where you kind of go through. But yeah, consulting is a different skill set. It's very different from any other role that is there, and it's a good experience to have.
Okay. Which companies do you think an MBA operations student should focus on for their placements?
Yeah, I would say, like I was saying, the first focus should actually be on consulting companies because that is the best way to learn the most because you will learn as well as you will be learning fast as the system is designed to operate with the give outputs with the minimum amount of time because it's basically consulting operates is your hours are charged to the client. So if you park 20 hours on a problem versus someone who is parking 10 hours on a problem, you're a much more efficient person and you will be carried forward rather than the other guy. So you learn fast, you learn more because you switch across projects, you have to upskill on different, say, domains, different functions and things like that. So you learn fast, you learn more. So consulting companies is obviously the best bet that is there. Second would be traditional FMCG companies because you will learn the best in class practices and processes. And the advantage here is that you get to work with the maximum responsibility. With consulting, even at a manager level, even if they are preparing something that goes through multiple levels of review up to a partner. But with industry, especially in FMCGs, you are responsible for your output. So you're completely that way fully responsible for your results and output. So that way, maximum responsibility you gain in FMCG. And the third area would be e-commerce because you will be able to work in unstructured environments where you design and set up processes. And it is one of the growing areas. So there's no doubt about that a person should focus there. But I would say, I mean, given a choice, I would tire them that way. First is consulting, second is FMCG, and third is e-commerce.
Describe your life as an MBA operations student at SPJ in Bombay.
So, with SPGNC, one major advantage is that you get to stay in Andheri in Bombay. That's actually very nice place to be. The campus is also relatively okay. I mean, it's not as great as an IIM campus, and it's spread across multiple acres with multiple facilities and things like that. But it is decently okay. It's a very nice place to kind of experience your MBA journey. I mean, it will be surprised to see that such a place exists in the heart of Andheri. So that way, it's a good experience. Number one. Number two would be with SPGen, the advantage is that you get to interact with very bunch of very smart people, whether it be your peers or be your professors and other kind of visiting faculties and people like that, and hopefully pick up a couple of their best practices. So that is one another area where you kind of learn a lot. Um, you get, and the third this thing is that third pointer here is that you get to work in high pressure, high performance, and kind of pretty highly competitive environment. Not only in the classroom or in the tests, but it also in things like organizing fests, getting selected for the team that organizes fests, um, all the other stuff which have competitive grading, any entry into any committees and everything, placement committees and things like that. So it's a great journey. It's a lot of learning and it's a great journey. Specifically for SPGen, yes, because the entire Bombay and Andheri is a major part of it. So without a doubt, yeah, it's a very nice journey.
Okay. What are some prerequisite skills that companies look for in an operations specialization candidate during placements?
Yeah, this answer again will be similar to my answer for preparing for placements. It will not necessarily be limited to operations. So I think the number one thing that they're looking for is depth in understanding of concepts. So whether it be operations, supply chain, so either the entire service operations framework or the entire way the Sunil Chopra describes supply chain from a strategic fit right down to calculation of safety stock. So those kind of things, understanding them in, I mean, with clarity is something that will be required. Um, One major thing that helps in interviews I've seen is if you have used any sort of structural analysis in your previous work ex, or if you are able to represent your previous work ex through some structural analysis, it helps. For example, if you have done some error correction somewhere, so maybe you can describe that through a fishbone analysis, or a 5 why sort of analysis. Those things, a uh, structural thinking process helps. Um, Another area which I have actually touched upon in the previous question is clarity on the work ex in your CV. So specifically, they generally ask you questions regarding what you have done, not necessarily a overall project that was there. You have to be very specific on what your contribution, the impact, and things like that. And what another thing that impacts is the soft skills like structure in speaking and overall body language. Speaking in a car format, context, action, result, or I do not know what other formats are there. So basically, that's what I know. So that's why I'm saying overall body language in terms of eye contact, in terms of your placement of your shoulders and things like that. So those things are mostly available over the internet. So you can just people can just look it up and practice. So by and large, these 4 or 5 things, if you have, so they test your technical skills. So that is kind of addressed to the first 1 or 2 pointers. Second would be HR related pointers. So HR related pointers, I hope I am expecting people would prepare HR questions. So that kind of is tying into the clarity of the work ex. So clarity of the work ex and HR question is the same, another area. And obviously looking at a person, how that person fits into the company culture. So uh, like, structure in speaking, having an overall positive body language, making eye contact, having that kind of a friendly smile, or maybe not having a smile, that also.
Mm.
I mean, either way, you present yourself in the best format possible. So those kind of 4 or 5 things, if you have, it shouldn't be too hard to crack a placement.
Yeah.
Yeah.